Brothers and sisters, I have to admit I really struggled with putting together this week's homily. Many failed attempts to start, prayers to God to inspire me, reading the readings over and over. And it seemed nothing was coming to mind. Imagine what it must have been like for Bartimaeus. How many years was he sitting at the side of the road just outside of Jericho, hoping someone would notice him, hoping someone would provide for his needs, hoping against all hopes that somehow God may look kindly on him and restore his sight. How many years passed by that he thought himself rejected by both God and man? How many times did he wish that not only was he dead, but that he was never born in the first place? Brothers and sisters, can we not see in the life and struggles of Bartimaeus the times in our own lives when we may have felt the same, where we were like blind beggars unable to help ourselves, just waiting for the Lord to deliver us from our miseries? Brothers and sisters, in the first reading we hear from the prophet Jeremiah 6 centuries before Christ. Jerusalem and the southern kingdom of Judah had been sacked, and the survivors of the battle were taken off into exile in Babylon. Like Bartimaeus, they felt lost, abandoned. They felt they'd lost everything, even God's blessing. Yet God, through the prophet Jeremiah, promised a restoration of their land and their lives and their nation. And this did eventually come 70 years later. Jesus, the ultimate promise of God through Jeremiah, wasn't to come for another 600 years. Here lies the biggest quandary for us human beings. To God, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. How often do we feel God is not hearing us, answering our prayers? How often do we feel that God is so slow in acting? Brothers and sisters, we don't know how long Bartimaeus was sitting by the side of the road, but there is much that we can learn from today's gospel reading. Let's break it down. Firstly, God knows exactly where we are all sitting along that same road outside of Jericho. God knows our needs, even though it seems at various times that He's ignoring them. But like that day when Jesus walked that road, so too God will be walking that road in our own lives. Like Bartimaeus, we need to ceaselessly call on the Lord Jesus to have pity on us. This is what prayer is, continuing in faithfulness and hope that the only one who can change our lives will finally intervene and heal our brokenness. Then, brothers and sisters, we need to be prepared for all sorts of impediments to our prayers and hope. Satan, like those in today's gospel who were scolding Bartimaeus and telling him to be quiet, will also try to quench our hope and tempt us to stop praying. In response to this assault, we must redouble our effort, for Jesus can surely hear us and often allows these delays to ensure we're seeking the giver of gifts and not the gifts of the giver. When we eventually do have that graced moment, that moment when we know categorically God is with us, it is then that God will say to us, "What do you want me to do for you?" In response, like Bartimaeus, we must begin by recognizing God's greatness, even though we've been tempted to think otherwise all this time in our darkness. Bartimaeus called Jesus Rabboni, or teacher, and master. Let us also recognize God as teacher and master, and then add to that our humble request. Brothers and sisters, we now arrive at the final part of today's gospel. Jesus says to Bartimaeus, "Go, your faith has saved you." He didn't say, "Go, your faith has caused your sight to be restored." Bartimaeus wanted to see again. Jesus wanted him to go to heaven. And so it is for each and every one of us. We want many things. He only wants one: for us to be united with Him in heaven for all eternity. Whether He answers our prayers or not, even ones where we demonstrate great faith, will depend on whether the answering of that prayer will result in our salvation. So, as we sit on the side of the road outside of Jericho, let us ask ourselves, do we seek to believe that we may see, or do we seek to see that we may believe? Depending on how we answer that question will determine very much what we will ask of God when He walks towards us on that road.